The bell of the Cathedral of the Emperor's Light was meant to ring for 7 days. A holy resonance that would carry through the spires of Hive Antioch like thunder sent by the throne itself. But on the 4th day, the bell fell silent. The Vox relays stuttered. The picked feeds went black. And every servitor monitoring the Mass inside the Grand Cathedral, over 100,000 faithful kneeling in reverence, reported one final sound. Not a scream. Not prayer. But laughter. And then, nothing. When the Inquisition received word, they did not send a company of stormtroopers. They did not glass the hive. They sent one man. A confessor. His name was Marn Elias. And this was not his first silence. He arrived beneath a sky the color of bruised parchment. Clouds did not move here, they lingered, like incense too heavy to rise. The hive stretched above and below him, titanic, rusted, wheezing with the weight of billions. No one greeted him. The gates of Hive Antioch were open. Too open. He stepped into the city with a censer in one hand, his bolt pistol holstered but heavy. His robes bore the sigils of the ecclesiarchy, but under them, woven into the lining, were the marks of inquisitorial sanction. He was a priest. He was also a blade. And he had come to cut through heresy. The streets were empty. But not abandoned. Candles still burned. Machines still hummed. An auto carriage passed him without a driver, trundling along invisible tracks. On the walls, he saw devotional script burned into the stone, old verses, overwritten by symbols he could not decipher. Glyphs like looping scars, fractal patterns that seemed to shimmer when stared at too long. He spoke aloud, activating his Vox recorder. Initial entry. Hive Antioch. No signs of battle. No signs of bodies. But the city breathes. Far above, in the broken arches of the cathedral spires, something moved. A flicker. A shadow without form. He walked on. And the hymns began. They came not from speakers, nor singers. The air itself vibrated. A low chorus, half prayer, half moan. Each word unfamiliar, but formed with the cadence of litanies. He stopped beneath a statue of Saint Azilian. It was weeping. Thick, red tears. The hymn grew louder. He pressed his back to the statue. Whispered a prayer of protection. But the voice behind the hymn changed. It said his name. Not once. But again. And again. Elias. Elias. Confessor of Ash. He turned, pistol drawn. There was no one there. Only the cathedral. Waiting. The doors creaked open on their own. He stepped inside. The nave stretched wider than it should have. Cathedrals were grand by nature. Designed to remind mortals of their size before the emperor. But this place, this architecture, felt wrong. Proportions too vast. Ceilings too high. Columns that looked grown instead of carved. And yet, the iconography was all correct. Saints. Martyrs. The emperor triumphant, seated upon his golden throne. But the faces. Each statue's face had changed. Mouths open in silent song. Eyes bleeding pitch. Some wore expressions of ecstasy. Others, fear. And one statue, tall and central, bore the emperor's likeness. Except his hands were reversed. Fingers bent backwards. Palms outward. As though welcoming something. Elias kept walking. Every step echoed. Every step answered by a whisper. He activated his Rosarius. A thin halo shimmered over his shoulders. No bodies, he muttered. No ash. No sign of struggle. But the pews were full. He stopped. Looked again. And saw them. Shapes. Forms. Hunched. praying. Each figure flickered, as though caught between dimensions. Wearing robes. Tattered. Skinned. One turned. No face. Only a gaping mouth, filled with scripture. It sang. He fired. Bolt round. Direct hit. The figure burst, not into flesh, but parchment. Pages fluttered. Each one inked in blood. They circled him. Danced like carrion birds. And then dissolved. Silence. He walked on. He descended deeper. Past the altar. Past the ossuaries. Into the reliquary. This was where the cathedral kept its most sacred fragments, bones of saints, shreds of martyrs' robes, vials of dried tears. But the reliquary was no longer quiet. Voices whispered from behind sealed glass. Each relic had grown a mouth. A femur hummed psalms. A jawbone chattered verses. A skull wept ink. Elias moved carefully. His torch cast long, shivering shadows along the walls. The cases were cracked open. Some relics were missing. The ones that remained had changed. He approached a case labeled, Tongue of Saint Varial. Inside was not a tongue. It was a worm. Red, long, slithering across parchment. It spoke. Faith is flesh. Flesh is him. He crushed it underfoot. Another case, untouched. A vial of sacred tears. But now the tears boiled. Each bubble a word. Each word a name. His name. The walls vibrated. Not from machines. But from voices buried within the stone. He reached the central reliquary. An ark of gold and silver, locked with seals. All were broken. Inside was supposed to be the heart of Saint Celebor, preserved in stasis for 10,000 years. It was gone. In its place, a book. Bound in skin. He touched it. It opened itself. Not with a flutter. But with a sigh. The pages were blank. Then one word appeared. Welcome. He slammed it shut. But the whisper came again. Confessor of Ash, you have already read it. He backed away. Torch flickering. Light dimming. The reliquary doors slammed shut behind him. He was not alone. The cathedral's heart pulsed with silent sound. Elias stepped deeper into the nave, past shattered pews and crumbled frescoes that seemed to bleed color from the walls themselves. The voices persisted, whispered litanies with no source, no singer. The very air quivered with unspoken words. He paused beneath the great organ loft. The massive pipes stood cracked and rusted, their mouths open as if to sing, but no notes emerged. Instead, a chorus arose, an unnatural choir of silent tongues. The statues lining the nave seemed to lean closer. Their stone lips moved, but no sound came forth. Still, the hymn grew stronger, pressing on Elias's mind, a melody of madness written in a language older than the Imperium. He gripped his rosarius tighter, its halo flickering. His thoughts swirled with doubt. Was this the Emperor's light, or something darker responding? Suddenly, the hymn broke into a scream, not from outside, but inside his own head. The choir without tongues cried out in agony, and the cathedral trembled. Elias staggered forward, fighting the growing despair. He could feel the weight of countless eyes watching from the shadows, waiting. The hymn whispered his name once more. Elias. Confessor of Ash. He closed his eyes, spoke a prayer for strength, and stepped onward, into the growing darkness. The deeper Elias ventured, the heavier the air grew. Thick with the scent of incense and something metallic, something like rusted blood. The cathedral statues, once silent sentinels, now wept torrents of crimson ichor. The fluid dripped, pooling at their bases, steaming on the cold stone floors. Elias knelt to inspect one, the statue of Saint Azelian, whose bleeding eyes seemed to follow his every movement. His hand trembled as he raised a cleansing cloth, but the blood resisted, crawling, pulsing like living veins. A whisper emerged from the statue's mouth, barely audible, a sermon twisted and warped. Purity is flesh. Machine is heresy. The words chilled him deeper than the cathedral's dark. As he withdrew, the statues around him began to shift, the stone cracking and shifting like flesh beneath bone. One statue's hand reached out, not stone, but warm, sinewy, dripping with blood. Elias leapt back, pistol raised. The statue lunged, but shattered under fire, crumbling to shards and gore. The hymn swelled, rising to a fevered pitch, and Elias realized this was no mere haunting. This was a living cathedral, a shrine to something that devoured faith and spit out blasphemy. He had to find its heart. Elias moved cautiously through the twisted shadows of the cathedral's undercroft. The air was cold and wet, dripping with the residue of ancient prayers long corrupted. His footsteps echoed off stone walls slick with crimson stains. Before him, a heavy slab of carved granite covered a hidden chamber, the cathedral's crypt, where saints and martyrs were said to rest. He pressed his hand to the stone. A pulse throbbed beneath his palm. Not mechanical. Not divine. Something alive. A heartbeat buried beneath centuries of stone. The chanting returned, faint but insistent. A single word repeated in his mind. Awaken. Elias drew his bolt pistol, scanning the dark. With a grinding sound, the slab began to shift. From the depths, a soft glow pulsed. Something ancient, something hungry. He stepped back as the crypt's door creaked open. Inside lay a mass, neither flesh nor metal, but a writhing fusion of both. Veins of cable intertwined with sinew. Eyes half-formed, flickering with unholy light. The cathedral's heart. The source of the hymn. The source of the madness. Elias swallowed hard, gripping his rosarius. He had to confront the abomination. For the emperor. Or whatever shadow had taken his place. Elias stepped into the crypt's cold embrace. The mass before him writhed softly, tendrils of flesh and cable twisting like serpents. The glow pulsed rhythmically, a sick heartbeat in the darkness. From the living mass, voices rose, not spoken aloud, but whispered directly into his mind. Join us. Become whole. The whispers caressed his thoughts, weaving doubt and longing. The fusion of flesh and machine promised unity beyond faith, beyond pain. Elias fought to resist, but a creeping warmth spread through his veins. His vision blurred. The cathedral's hymn became a lullaby, seductive, eternal. His rosarius flickered weakly. Was this salvation? Or damnation? He took a step closer. Elias's breath caught in his throat as the whispers deepened. His faith, once unshakable, now trembled on the edge of ruin. He recalled the creed of the emperor, the unyielding light that had guided him through darkness. Yet here, in this hallowed place, the creed fractured. He heard the heresy within the voices, worship not of the emperor, but of flesh itself. Machine was abomination. Flesh was divine. His mind reeled, struggling to hold the line. The cathedral's shadows writhed, twisting into grotesque shapes that mocked the sanctity he had sworn to uphold. His rosarius glowed faintly, a beacon against the encroaching void. But the darkness whispered still. And Elias knew the battle was far from over. Elias pushed deeper into the cathedral, each step heavier than the last. The grandeur of the sanctuary was gone, replaced by ruin and desecration. Broken pews lay strewn like discarded bones. The once sacred murals peeled away, revealing raw, pulsating flesh beneath. A hollow wind moaned through shattered stained glass, carrying faint echoes of forgotten prayers. The hymn persisted, now a cacophony of sorrow and madness. From the shadows emerged shapes, half flesh, half stone, creatures born of blasphemy. They reached for him with claws of bone and sinew. Elias raised his bolt pistol, voice steady as he intoned a prayer for the emperor's judgment. The creatures recoiled but advanced again. The sanctuary had become a battlefield. And Elias stood alone. Elias's eyes adjusted to the darkness, but the shadows seemed alive, watching. The cathedral's twisted heart beat with a malevolent rhythm. He felt its gaze, cold, unblinking, eternal. The abyss within whispered secrets no mortal mind should hear. Visions flickered behind his eyelids, writhing masses, endless voids, and stars burning cold in the warp. A question burned brighter than all faith. Was the emperor truly the light? Or had something older, darker answered the prayers that day? Elias raised his rosarius high, a final defiance. The abyss did not blink. It only waited. The cathedral's walls seemed to breathe. Elias felt the fragile barrier between reality and nightmare thinning. Whispers grew louder, voices overlapping in a maddening chorus. His mind strained to hold on to reason. Visions of the mass, the silent crowd, and the laughter haunted him. The cathedral was no longer just a place of worship, it was a veil, hiding horrors too vast to comprehend. Elias's hands trembled as the rosarius flickered weakly. He knew the closer he drew to the truth, the more fragile his mind became. The veil was lifting. And madness waited beneath. Elias entered a chamber where the hymn resonated strongest. The walls pulsed like living flesh, echoing a choir of hollow voices. They sang in a language older than the Imperium, a song woven from despair and hope twisted into one. The air shimmered with unseen presence. Statues lined the chamber, faces serene, eyes closed, but their mouths moved in silent song. Elias felt the weight of their gaze, heavy with expectation. The hymn's meaning was clear now, not a prayer to the emperor, but a summons. A call to join the choir, to become part of the endless song. Elias steeled himself. He would not join. Not yet. Elias pushed onward, leaving the hollow choir behind. The cathedral's light had dimmed to a faint glow, barely piercing the endless shadow. He thought of the emperor, the golden light promised to all who served. But here, in this cursed place, that light was absent. Instead, he saw flickers of something else, a darkness that swallowed hope and sang in silence. Elias's faith faltered, but his resolve remained. He was a confessor. He was a blade in the dark. And he would find the source of this corruption. Even if it meant facing the light unseen. The deeper Elias ventured, the more the cathedral's grip tightened. His prayers faltered, the words feeling brittle on his tongue. Faith, once a fortress, now felt like shattered glass beneath his boots. He saw it everywhere, fractured icons, desecrated altars, and scriptures rewritten in a language that twisted meaning into madness. A creeping doubt gnawed at his soul. Had the emperor abandoned this place? Or had Elias been blind all along? His rosarius dimmed, a flicker fading against the darkness. But somewhere beyond the shattered halls, a new light glimmered. A light that promised answers. Or final despair. Elias found himself in a chamber where silence was absolute. No whispers. No hymns. Just the weight of absence pressing on his soul. He knelt in the center, seeking solace in prayer. But his lips moved soundlessly, the words stolen by the void. The silence screamed louder than any chant. Memories of the Mass. The sea of faces, the sudden laughter, the void afterward, haunted him. Had the emperor heard their prayers? Or had something else answered? The silence seemed to mock him, daring him to break it. Elias clenched his fists, vowing to pierce the void, to find truth in the quiet. The shadows in the cathedral no longer felt like mere absence of light. They moved, alive, restless, crawling along the cracked stone like sentient smoke. Elias felt their presence wrap around him, whispering secrets too terrible to speak aloud. Each step forward seemed to shift the very walls, as if the cathedral itself was rearranging to trap him. His mind strained against the creeping dread. Was this place alive? Or a prison of the warp-made flesh? He gripped his rosarius tightly, reciting the creed to hold back the darkness. But the shadows laughed, twisting his words into blasphemy. Elias's faith wavered, but he pressed onward. The truth lay just beyond the shifting veil. Elias descended further into the bowels of the cathedral, where the air grew thick with dust and despair. Walls whispered names lost to time, saints forgotten by all but the darkest corners of the Imperium. The echoes of their prayers lingered, hollow and haunting. Each step awakened memories buried deep in Elias's soul, memories not his own but shared across millennia. He felt the weight of forgotten worship, of faith twisted and abandoned. The hymn, once distant, now rose around him, a chorus of the forsaken. He questioned what it meant to serve a God when the echoes of that service were lost to oblivion. And yet, he pressed onward, searching for the source of this dark devotion. Elias's breath hitched as an unseen presence closed in around him. The cathedral seemed to hold its breath, the very air thick with anticipation. He sensed eyes upon him, eyes that saw beyond flesh and bone, piercing straight into his soul. Whispers turned to murmurs, murmurs to a chorus of voices speaking in tongues older than humanity. The presence was not merely a being, but a force, a vast, ancient intelligence that had answered the prayers of the faithful long ago. It did not speak of salvation. It spoke of transformation, of sacrifice, of a new order born from the ashes of old faith. Elias gripped his rosarius tighter, feeling the weight of his choices pressing down. Was he still a servant of the Emperor, or a pawn in something far darker? The deeper Elias descended, the quieter the cathedral became. Even the whispered hymns faded into an oppressive silence. The silence was heavier than any sound, suffocating and absolute. It pressed against his ears, dulling his senses. His footsteps echoed like distant thunder, a reminder of his solitary path. In the void, visions flashed, a mass of faces frozen in terror, the last moments before the silence fell. Elias questioned everything. His faith, his mission, his very soul. Had he been sent to confront evil, or had he been led to his own undoing? The cathedral's depths awaited. And beyond the silence lay the final truth. Elias reached the heart of the cathedral, a vast chamber bathed in an unholy glow. The altar was gone, replaced by a pulsating mass of flesh and light. The source of the hymn, the source of the transformation. He stepped forward, his rosarius raised. A voice echoed, not from lips, but from the very walls. Confessor Elias, you have arrived. The cathedral itself spoke, a consciousness born of the warp and faith intertwined. It offered a choice, abandon his creed and join the new order, or be consumed by the void. Elias looked to the shattered heavens beyond the broken roof. He whispered a final prayer to the Emperor, or perhaps to whatever God still listened. Then, with steady breath, he made his choice. The hymn swelled, the cathedral responded, and the veil between faith and madness was forever torn.